And so I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying that I think that sometimes these tests can have like a false reassurance or false fear, depending. Having that happen really solidified for me. I was like, nope, unless our minds are completely changed, I don't want any more ultrasounds. I was like, because this is exactly it. What do I think I'm having? And I could be totally wrong because I wasn't right with Logan. But I think I'm having... Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my living room and welcome to a healthy morning with Nikki. No, but seriously, I'm feeling great this morning and super inspired and excited to film. Honestly, this might be the best I've felt in since I've gotten pregnant, pretty much. It's been a really rough pregnancy, which I'll probably talk about a little bit today because, as you can tell by the title, I'm going to be doing a pregnancy Q&A, kind of an all-around pregnancy Q&A because other than on Instagram, where I did kind of write mini blog posts, I haven't really talked very much about a lot around my pregnancy. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But today I'm here to answer questions that you guys submitted on Instagram, and I'm just excited. Yesterday was a horrible day, so sick. If you don't know what I'm talking about, by the way, at this point, if you haven't seen my other videos, I have been dealing with Hyperemesis gravidarum this pregnancy and my last two pregnancies, but this has been the worst by far. And it's just so wild to me that I could have a day like yesterday where it was so hard and bad and then wake up today and be like, hey, I'm feeling good. So I'm excited to chat with you guys. I'm going to start this video not exactly with a question that was on there, although this is a question, I've been asked this question many times. I thought I was gonna make a whole separate video for this, but now, I don't know, with just it being so sporadic and hard for me to film, I feel like since I'm sitting here and this is in the topic of pregnancy, I wanna just share the story so that it's not still just okay, what am I going to tell them? I'm going to try to make it not the longest story in the world. I'm going to try to make this video not the longest video in the world, but we all know me. My friend sent me a meme you've probably seen going around that's I'll tell people, oh, I'm going to tell you the short version, and then I end up telling you the double VHS Titanic long version, extended version, so I'm going to try. Okay, so... Focus, Nikki. The crazy thing about this whole pregnancy journey, and I've mentioned this on Instagram a few times, is that this is very much a surprise pregnancy in some ways. In some ways, spiritually, I guess you could say, it doesn't feel like a surprise. And in a lot of ways, this was our plan, but in other ways, it completely wasn't. Now, let me explain to you what I mean. Dan and I have been married for 15 years. I think it's going to be... Yeah, I think it's about to be 15 years. And 16 years. Okay, so we've been married for a while and we have prevented pregnancy the entire time. So I'm pretty aware-ish of my body. And even when we were trying, it was very purposeful. And earlier in the year, we had decided that we wanted to start trying again for a baby in August. Now, if you've been following my channel, you know that I actually miscarried last year on March 20th. And I was not someone who wanted to get pregnant right away. I've had a lot of processing. Processing a lot around my miscarriage. Everyone handles it differently, obviously. I have said this before. I didn't leave my miscarriage feeling what happened? I mean, I did to an extent because we'll never know. But I left my miscarriage very much feeling you know what? I need to really invest into my health. Because the whole year leading up to that, the whole 2 years leading up to that were just insane in our personal life, in the world. A lot was going down. And so when I left my miscarriage, I was you know what? I think you guys know what I mean. Coming out of my miscarriage, I felt I really needed to focus on my health. Anyways, in that process of focusing on my health, I also started focusing on new projects. You guys know also, if you follow my videos, I had been working on a cookbook. I had been working on I'm calling it kind of a kitchen confidence, developing a healthy relationship with food type of course. I had been working on that for a while. And I thought in my head, and so did Dan, we thought in our head. Whenever I say that, Dan's you only think thoughts in your head. You don't have to say you thought it in your head. I'm you're right. But I did think it in my head that we were okay, we'll probably be wrapped up with this and I want to start trying again in August. So fast forward, we get closer to August and this was maybe June or July. We kind of came to the realization we were you know what? I think we need to wait. And it was because I had dove so deep into these projects and because our life has been so crazy the last few years. Like everything that we're working on, it's shifted. Like, how do I even, I don't want to say it's all gotten more serious. I don't know the wording for it, but like moving back across the country again, buying a new house, trying to renovate this house, dealing with everything that went on online with us, with the cancellation, shifting our goals work-wise, how we want to set up our family. All of it just feels like, okay, here we go. And anyways, we had decided, you know what? I think we need to wait just like a couple more months. Now, I was really bummed about that, even though, I mean, I was a big part of coming to that decision, obviously, talking about it with Dan. I was bummed because I really had August in my head for like a while, like since the beginning of the year. And I had hurt my knee in the beginning of the year, and that was part of it too, was like, okay, I can keep working on this project. It doesn't make sense for me to try to get pregnant now because we had thought originally we were going to try at the beginning of the year. And all of this is, side note that's not a side note, under the very like obvious like I hope you guys know that I know that God is the giver of life. You make your plans. It is what it is. That's kind of the point of this story. But I mean, I don't know. I know when people have a harder time or have had taken a longer time to conceive, it can sound very weird to be like, we're planning to get, because it's, you know, but you open the gates. That's a better way to put it. We were planning on opening the gates in the beginning of the year. And then when I hurt my knee, we were like, this doesn't make any sense. Between the projects I'm working on and my knee, this doesn't make any sense. But got closer to August, I was bummed. And I remember I actually told Dan, end of July, early August, I said, dude, I'm so bummed because there's literally part of me that feels like we are supposed to have a baby in August. Like we're supposed to get pregnant. And Dan said to me, well, we could try. You want to change our minds? Like, let's just change our minds. And I was like, no, like, I don't want to make an emotional decision. We thought about this logically and we're going to wait because that is what makes the most sense for our family. Well, fam, basically this is where it gets a little mysterious because obviously we had made the decision. We are aware of timing and my bodily functions. And on top of being aware of how, you know, like the ovulation schedule and how my body functions, I was also taking, like I had been taking ovulation strips in months leading up to really make sure that I wasn't just like, okay, I think I know what's going on here. I wanted like that visual confirmation for a lot of different reasons that I won't go off on, like a whole different tangent. But so I thought I knew. Anyways, that being said, actually I need a sip of my drink. I'm getting excited. We had decided to wait. It is what it is. Danced around my schedule by quite a bit, which is really what adds to this whole level of like mystery. I actually talked about this recently on a Patreon podcast because if you didn't know this, I don't know, maybe you know it, maybe you don't. It's not like I've announced it far and wide, but I am back on Patreon and I'm uploading Patreon exclusive podcasts where I'm like answering questions, talking through different things, all of that. But one of the podcasts was about my fertility journey and my thoughts around conception in general. And I'm definitely at the point where I think there is just like a lot of mystery around conception. Like, yes, it's not bad. And obviously we can look at the nitty gritty of how, you know, okay, it's only possible to get pregnant once a month when you drop your eggs. It's like, we can look at that, but I don't necessarily believe that, especially now between myself as well as what's happened to a couple of friends in my direct community. Like I talk about this on Patreon. So one night in August, I was going to the bathroom and then all of a sudden I was getting back in bed and I threw my neck out. And it was definitely the weirdest neck throw out I've ever had because I wasn't doing anything. And I rarely am doing things when I've thrown out my neck or back in the past, but they're usually something like a sneeze or like I look up kind of weird and something happens. But on this night, nothing happened. I was just like getting in bed and it was like, I was like, oh no. And just like always, I really hoped at first that nothing was wrong. But I knew, I'm like, throw my neck out. And so that week it was really rough and I just decided to lay low. I was actually supposed to go to my physical therapist appointment that week. I couldn't go, I couldn't drive. I was like, dude, we can't even mess with my body. It just is what it is. By the way, if you hear random sounds in the background, Logan's trains just keep turning on. Anyways, so there's that. So later in the week, after being stuck in the house for the whole week, we had actually signed up for a local farm dinner, like the most beautiful event. a couple of months earlier. And I was like, dude, we paid a lot of money for this event. And besides that, we've been like looking forward to this. I was like, I'm not going to skip this event. And like, honestly, I've been penned up inside all week. And this is after coming off of months of like my knee injury and just being excited to get out. So I had a little bit of wine that night and I went to the event. I was like, all right, keep chill, Nikki. Like walked around like a robot, but it was so beautiful, so worth it, so life-giving with just like, I don't know, it was such a reminder of why we're up here and how amazing the people around us are. It was a really great night. So we did that, came home. The next morning, I woke up at 3 a.m. and I could not sleep, like could not sleep. And I was up just doing things, working around the house and taking care of my neck, doing some exercises, taking a bath, eating snacks, just like up. I went in the backyard. That's kind of something I do sometimes if I get up randomly, which is not really something that happens ever. And actually this is kind of depressing, but also it's just part of the story. When I miscarried, actually, that was one of the things when I was miscarrying, my sleep was really messed with as well. I would just wake up at like 3 a.m. and I would go in the backyard and I would just stand in our grass and look up at the moon and cry and pray. And so it's just, I don't know. I love having a backyard. I didn't grow up with a backyard. I grew up in a condo where there really was nowhere to go. Why would I want to be going out as a kid at night? I don't know. Here I am going off on a tangent. Anyways, so I went out each night, morning, 3 a.m. And I would also ground and watch the sunrise. And I don't want to say I had a feeling I was pregnant, but I started to wonder. I was like, dude, something is like, this is not normal. And I knew my period was coming, but I was missing my period symptoms. So like normal, like that's not a period symptom for me, not being able to sleep. A period symptom for me is being exhausted and sleeping a bunch, and getting just, really tired. And also another period symptom for me, like a joke, is that in the day, really it's about a day before I start my period, the night before, you'll always see me in bed with chocolate. Like chocolate is my giveaway that my period is coming. And I was not craving chocolate at all that week. Like I didn't want it at all. And so I started to be like, dude, what's going on? But I was kind of obviously in denial because every time you're waiting to find out if you're pregnant, you're a little bit like, no, is it? Could it be? But also like, just because of the timing and what we had purposefully done or not done, I was kind of confused. So the third night after, I believe this was like a Friday night or a Saturday night of Wednesday, Thursday. So I think it was Friday. Getting up and going outside and grounding and watching the sunrise. I went out and I had in my earphones, I was playing worship music and just looking at how beautiful it is. It's so beautiful where we live. And I'm looking around and listening to this worship music. And then a song comes on, which was like my miscarriage song. That's how it's like classified in my brain. And that song started playing. I don't know how many times I've said this online. It's a weird song that I've attached to for that, but it's the song Gratitude by Brandon Lake. And I don't know why that became my miscarriage song, but it did. And that song started playing and I started crying in just standing there watching the sunrise. Zoe was at my feet. I thought I'd pick her up while I tell the rest of the story. I'm looking around, the sun is rising and I'm hearing the song. And all of a sudden I've said this before, okay? I'm one of those people that like, I feel like God has spoken to me clearly a few times in my life. It doesn't happen all the time. And it's not something that I'm necessarily going out trying to look for, but I'd be lying or trying to like receive in that sense, like say something. Yes, in the sense that like I pray regularly, but I don't know. That's the only way I can explain it. I'm not like trying to like, God, that sounds weird because I am, but you get what I mean. I'd be lying though if I didn't tell the truth in some of those moments of like, I really felt like God spoke to me. And I'm standing there listening to the song and I really felt like God said, look down. And I looked down and in the grass, there is a flower growing out, just randomly in the middle of the grass, and a second flower growing out of the main stem. And I felt like God said, you're pregnant. And I hit the ground, and was just crying and listening to this music. And it was such a intimate, like surreal moment, because even though I'm someone that will get on the internet and be like, God told me, I don't know. It's more this thing of like, I feel like God told me and I have to tell you that that's true. But I almost couldn't believe it. And in the moment I was like, am I making this up? I didn't care. Because I also told myself in the moment, I'm like, who cares, Nikki? Like this song, this journey you've been through of conception, your miscarriage, like it means something, and it is what it is, but whatever. I was too embarrassed to tell Dan is the point of that. Cause I was like, dude, I'm not going to tell him this if I'm not pregnant. It just felt like I just didn't want to say anything. And I even almost took a picture of the flower. I didn't even want to take a picture of the flower though, because I was so like nervous that I was going to be wrong or making something up. But I did bring the flower inside and it stayed in my house for a few days till it was, kaput. I want to also throw out that during this week, I had a couple other things happen and had like taken some pictures of things leading up to this that was like, whoa, like just felt like a giant lead up. One of those being in that window of like when we went to that dinner, and then when I had that moment in my backyard somewhere in there, like Thursday or Friday during the day. And I didn't realize this, side note, till like 2 months later when I looked back at the timestamps, like the dates for the pictures. But we had a double rainbow come right over our house. And that felt really crazy and symbolic as well. Haven't seen a double rainbow since. You don't see them all the time. And it was that same week. And yeah, I know I had other things happen, but I don't even remember right now off the top of my head. It was a beautiful week. The other thing actually that did happen was that Friday night I went to I went to an event with my church, a woman's like tea party situation in the most stunning garden, like 3 minutes from my house. And I was just there with all these women and around all these beautiful blooming flowers. And the weather was so perfect and everything was just so beautiful. And I don't really know how to explain it other than it was like that whole week just kind of felt like this like hazy, euphoric entrance into like, you're pregnant, lady. And that event was part of it as well. And it was just beautiful. So Sunday rolls around. And by this point I'm like, okay, I think I'm like 5 or 6 days late to my period at this point. And I was very nervous, but I took the pregnancy test and I got my very first super duper duper faint line. And at first, kind of like last time, actually funny enough, I remember right, Dan was like, no. And I'm like, Dan, there's no such thing as a false positive according to the internet. And so he ended up buying me like the ones that say the words on them, obviously. And we got multiple positives over the next day or so. But it was, just really surreal. That whole week of finding out was so surreal. And the moment in the backyard was the most surreal, and just so beautiful. And it's so crazy to me that like, I felt like we were supposed to be getting pregnant that month and we did. And I'm just like my mind is blown. I think I'm going to answer another question because I feel like the things I want to go off on tangents about are probably going to be brought up in questions that I'm going to read. But I wanted to just say that right at the top because like I said, I hadn't shared the story. Okay, so I'll answer these two questions because they're kind of back to back. So someone said, back to back. Are they like hold hands? I don't know. Whatever. Roll with me. Someone asked, have you had any ultrasounds? And I also answered this like in a short version on Instagram. I have had one ultrasound and we didn't see anything. So basically we've decided this pregnancy that unless something changes, we change our minds, the plan changes, whatever, we're not planning on doing any ultrasounds. And that's because I had been torn about this the whole time since my pregnancy with Logan. People get upset when I say this. That's fine. You can have the total opposite firm opinion. That's fine. Everybody always gets really mad about how experts have different opinions. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to life. That's what it is. People disagree. Anyways, this just got weird. I was going to say there are people who actually don't think that ultrasound is like totally safe. And it might be in terms of like, look, the baby came out fine. But there's a lot of things, especially if you hold my worldview in regards to like diet and environmental factors and hormonal disruptions or disruptors and endocrine disruptors, all these things. There's a lot of things that I think can impact the way that our body functions in day-to-day life, but especially how our body grows in the womb. And when I posted about this, I remember someone was like, I'm an ultrasound tech. I can promise you there's no side effects. And then the DM right after that was someone that was like, wow, it's really interesting that you're saying this because my husband is a physicist. I don't remember what the actual term was, but he works with sound waves for a living and he messes with them. This story is not being conveyed very well, but you get the gist. She was like, he does not want me to get an ultrasound because of what he has learned about sound waves and all of that. So it was funny to see like these two opposite opinions, but that pretty much sums it up. People have lots of different opinions. And it's not even like we might get one, but I didn't want one in the beginning. I felt like, meh. Also, there's part of me that's just kind of like, could I do it a little old fashioned? You know, like how they did it back in the day. And I realized a lot of things are not how they did it back in the day. We all pick and choose our modern things we want to pull from. But that was one of them. And I think with ultrasounds, there can be, I have a few friends one of them, she was a labor and delivery nurse for 12 years and she's like my doula. I call her my fake doula because she's not like really operating as my doula, but she kind of is. And she had said to me, and it goes way deeper than this. I could go off on a whole tangent, but once again, we're in a quick Q&A. Focus, Nikki. But she had said to me, she was like, Nikki, it's really incredible how many times over the years I have seen both of these things. One, where parents spend most of their pregnancy freaked out by something that was spotted on ultrasound or in some kind of test, like, oh, this is a problem. And then the baby gets here and they don't have that problem at all. Like even really extreme things, but all kinds of things that she said she's seen told to families that their kids have, and then the kid gets here and they don't have it. But she said she's also seen the opposite. Families who have been told that the baby is fine and healthy and everything's great, and then they get here and they don't even survive. They're not compatible with life. So like I said, it's not just like my one friend said this and I was like, great, I'll have no ultrasounds. It's a whole other wormhole. But ultimately we were just like, okay, yeah, let's pass. Now, all that to say, I did have one ultrasound. And what happened was around 6 and 7 weeks, I had some spotting. And I was pretty sure things were okay because they happened after very distinct periods of time. Like, oh, I just did my workout and did a bunch of squats and I'm having some spotting. Or one day I had thrown up so much, I was so dehydrated and I was having some spotting. So to me, it was like, okay, this makes sense. But also I've miscarried, and that's how it basically started, was with spotting. And so I was a little concerned. And when we went to our first midwife appointment, which I believe was at like 8 weeks, she had said to us, like, do you want me to check on my little handheld ultrasound to see if we can see a heartbeat? And I was like, oh, I didn't know that was an option. And so she checked and she didn't see anything. She didn't see a baby. She didn't see any kind of like nothing in me. And now she ended up telling me, well, actually, this ultrasound is not like a full-on diagnostic, clinical, whatever the word would be, ultrasound. It's just a little handheld device. She goes, I want to do it because I've actually spotted pregnancies at 5 weeks on here. So I thought for sure we'd see your baby's heartbeat. She's like, but there's a chance that it wouldn't show, between the fact that we're pretty confident, if we remember right, that my uterus is actually tilted. And also I was fairly early. And having that happen really solidified for me. I was like, nope, unless our minds are completely changed, I don't want any more ultrasounds. I was like, because this is exactly it. I thought, yay, I'm going to get confirmation that my baby's okay. And then they check and it's like, no confirmation. Now, I know some of you might be like, well, you did a little handheld ultrasound like at a midwife, but I just want to throw out there, I'm just going to say it. It's actually not funny, but she's great. Stuff can happen anywhere. I have a friend that's working with like the traditional, like the hospital, the medical establishment. She is with a midwife as well, but also has an OBGYN. She spent a 2-week period of time literally where she thought she had AIDS. Like one of the tests she took told her she had AIDS. And apparently the lab had like messed up and told like a few women that they had this, but stuff can just happen. And there's just a big part of me going into this that I was just like, man, I don't even want to know. Like, I don't even want to know, not from an irresponsible, at least this is how I believe it, not from an irresponsible perspective, but from the perspective of wanting to keep things stress-free, and also knowing that so many things that they might potentially spot anyways are not, there's nothing you can actually do about them. So it really just depends on the person. And for a long time, I thought if something's wrong with my child, I want to know ahead of time before they get here. And I've just changed perspectives on that for, like I said, like I keep saying, a lot of different reasons that I could go off on a whole other tangent about. But I've changed my mind because I think that this time for me and for my baby in my belly is very special and sacred. And even if that wasn't on the list of things in my mind, there's enough going on that I'm having to like try to keep stress at bay, including the fact that like I'm still throwing up a lot. And so I just decided I want to give this baby the most peaceful rest in my womb that we can. And now I don't want anyone to think I'm like just being crazy, because honestly, my own fear, if that's the word we want to use, and research is what led me to home birthing, the idea of home birthing in the first place. I'm not someone that was just like, that's just home birth, like I went down the wormhole of statistics and facts and all these different things and thought about my personality and weighed it all out and what I'm comfortable with. And it was like, I literally think this makes the most sense, not only for me. In general, I think that home birth and natural birth is like makes sense for most women, but I think there's a lot of things that don't necessarily set us all up for that. Obviously, emergencies happen, but pretty much my mindset, if you went on the wormhole of like the documentary, The Business of Being Born, that's pretty much like what they present, and that is kind of, it's where my head's at. So yeah, which someone else also asked me if I have taken any medication for my hyperemesis. And it's kind of in a similar vein-ish to that. And the answer is no, I have not taken any medication for my hyperemesis, basically. Actually, it's the same as the ultrasound answer. I did try one medication early on in my pregnancy. I tried doing the Unisom B6 combo, which I did on and off through my whole pregnancy with Logan. And so I thought, okay, we'll try this. And I actually thought for the first couple nights, oh my gosh, I think maybe this is helping. And then I have a friend who was like, hey, do you want me to send you the guidelines that my OB sent me around just throwing up and medication and all this stuff, and specifically the usage of Unisom and B6? I was like, sure. So she sent it over and I'm like, okay, I can definitely go up a little bit in my dosage. I was using way less than what they were recommending. And I don't remember like the exact, oh, Dan's home. So we upped my dose a little bit. I don't even remember how much, so the story is going to lack some details. But we upped it, and that night I ended up getting so sick. Guys, like the most sick I've been the whole time. I'm not being dramatic when I say I threw up from 3:30 in the morning, like 3:30, till around 10:30 in the morning. And Dan was with me the whole time. It was like I was being exercised, like every sip of water out, bile out, snot out. It just kept going. And it was very clear, like to both of us, like this wasn't a natural reaction. I'm definitely having some kind of reaction to the medication. And after that, I mean, it was a whole thing. Those 2 weeks in there were crazy, but really that 7-hour period and then coming out of that and being like comatose in the bed, and like Dan had stayed up with me through the whole time because I would be throwing up, dripping sweat, and he'd like wipe me off with all these towels. And then I'd be like shaking, freezing, and then I'd start getting hot again. And then I'd throw up and drip sweat and then be like shaking, freezing. It was like this whole dramatic ordeal. And on a side note, that's not a side note, nothing in my life makes me feel more like clear about God's design for families and just bringing children into the world, or like, that's a weird way to word it. None of those were the way I was looking to word it. Nothing is more clear to me about like the partnership between a husband and a wife than when you're trying to bring a child into the world or build a family, because I feel so vulnerable. And I'm remembering this from my last pregnancy and my pregnancy with Logan. Like the way that I feel dependent on Dan, the way that I feel like I need him to protect me and to care for me is so heightened when I'm pregnant, because my pregnancies have so far been all really hard. And so it really like, I need Dan all the time, right? But like in a lot of ways, I've always been like this active. I've been working since I was 14. Like I don't know. I think you get what I mean. But like this intimate journey of of growing a child with Dan is really incredible to me. And I heard someone say the other day, they're like, oh, I hate it when people say like, we're pregnant. And part of me is like, totally, I get it. Like the chick's the one that's pregnant. But part of me is also like, dude, I say we're pregnant sometimes because this journey is so crazy. And I don't even feel like I could do it without him. And I feel like him and Logan, and honestly, my whole extended family are feeling this pregnancy a lot as well, because people have really, they've all really stepped up to help me and care for me. And we're just trying to get through the finish line, baby, and like praying for this baby every day, and me, of course. But yeah, so all of that being said, I have not taken any other medication for HG because, in my opinion, hyperemesis doesn't really exist. This is also a separate rant. Maybe I should make a whole video on my hyperemesis experience. I don't think it actually exists. I think that they've just named a symptom like extreme vomiting, and it could be different reasons for different women. And the reason that I think it's different things for different women is because different remedies help different women. So I've met different healthcare professionals that have been very confident about why they think women get HG, and then they'll tell me, and I'll be like, I do those things. And they almost, it's like, I don't know, do they not believe me? Or like, it'll kind of blow their mind. Or like, for example, I call her my angel, Brooke. She was my nurse that came over to my house for like 2 months there and would do IVs for me anywhere from 2 to 3 times a week. And she said to me as well, she's like, dude, you've kind of thrown me for a loop, because I really thought before treating you that I knew like, oh, this is just coming from women not eating a nutrient dense enough diet, like not eating clean food, eating junk food. And she's like, now that I've met you, I'm like, confused. I was like, I'm confused, Brooke. I'm confused. And that, if nothing else, the wormhole of hyperemesis has just left me confused, because I feel like I've tried so many of the hacks, so many of the things. And now, granted, the hack that I've settled on now, and who knows if that is what's helping it, or if it's just where I'm at in my pregnancy. But basically, one of the never-ending theories around hyperemesis is that you are someone that has, if you have this, that you have a cholesterol deficiency. And cholesterol is needed to make like every cell in the body. Cholesterol is needed to grow a baby, obviously. And that really resonated with me, because I've not had my cholesterol tested in a long time. But about 10 years ago when I had it tested, I had a doctor, and I had 2 doctors tell me, and the nurse that took the test, like took the blood, she's like, all of them said, I've never seen cholesterol this low ever. And it just lines up with a lot of other things, like knowing what cholesterol's functions are, what it does, how it, works with hormones, and different vitamins, which are actually hormones, to keep like calcium out of your soft tissue. And I've had calcium in my soft tissues. That was like my whole hip surgery, was because I grew a bone spur out of the side of my hip. Anyways, point being, that is the remedy that has seemed to help, and that I've really clung on to, and that is eating cholesterol-dense foods every 2 to 4 hours. So whether that's hard-boiled eggs or beef or cheese or bacon or something like that. And sometimes, I mean, it's hard to eat 99% of my life right now. Like, really, I'm pretty much never eating and having an appetite or it going down super easily. And it's like a gamble every time I eat, because I'll be like, okay, here we go. I have to count and force it down. And I'm trying, actually, we might have to change the subject quick because I'm getting a little sick. And there's no predictability, in the sense that, like, actually most of the time when I force the food down, it ends up making me feel somewhat better. But sometimes I just end up throwing it all up. But before, it was like most things I was throwing up. So it's so much better now, but it's still like low key torture. And I really don't know. So like yesterday I threw up 3 times, last night I did not throw up my snack. I haven't thrown up this morning. Obviously I'm feeling like full of energy. It's just quite the ride. And my mom, Logan's actually at my mom's house right now, because I was like, Mom, I'm feeling inspired. I'm awake. I want to film something. She's all, send him over now. Like, you're finally feeling better. There's just so many things that I haven't been able to do that I love to do in the last 6 months of my life. And I've been waiting to sit down and film this, and it's just been crazy. Anyway, so the cholesterol thing. But yeah, there's a lot of theories. And the reason I didn't want to take medication is because, like I said, I don't believe that HG is a thing. Every anti-nausea medication is actually very different. And some women use that to try to get to the root of like, okay, well, what's causing mine? But we're talking everything from, Unisom is actually an antihistamine, but it's used as a sleeping drug because antihistamines can make you sleepy. There's some of the drugs, I don't remember what diclectin is or Zofran, like the differences in what they do, but some of them are like antacids. So they're more for like, cutting acid in your stomach. I found a girl in New Zealand who the only medication that helped her was an anti-nausea medication that they give to cancer patients. And it's basically sounded similar to like an SSRI. Like it stops the uptake of your serotonin, which I already know, if some of you have been watching, I have wondered that. I was on an SSRI when I was pregnant with Logan, and my sickness was much less when I was pregnant with him, though I was still sick, but it wasn't like this. So it's just kind of a fascinating like wormhole, very confusing. And, it's a little ironic. I don't want to scare anyone either, because I know so many people that have been on medication and their babies seem totally fine. And everybody has to make their decisions day to day on like what modern things they're going to use and what things they aren't. So don't look at me and be like, oh my gosh, like she didn't do this, whatever. This is just letting you into my thoughts. For example, I've invested in one movie ever, and it's called Pharma, and it's actually about the story of thalidomide, which was an anti-nausea medication given to women in the 60s, and it took a long time till they figured out that this medication was making a lot of these babies be born with like arms and legs that were like stumps, essentially. And I'm not saying it's not the same thing now, right? The tracking systems are very different around medication, but you guys already know I'm weird with all of that anyways, and a little like, don't love the system, don't love the way pharmaceuticals are tested or rolled out, don't love the way that they use the phrase safe and effective around things that I wouldn't qualify them to be safe or even effective. And that's kind of how I feel about, for me, a lot of these anti-nausea medications. Also, to be honest, when I went down the wormholes, I didn't feel like there were many women that sounded much better than me. Like when they would say, oh my gosh, Zofran stopped my throwing up from 30 times a day to 5 times a day or 3 times a day. I thought, okay, well, I went through a 30 time a day throw up period too, but now I'm not throwing up 30 times a day. Is that because of where I'm at in my pregnancy? Is it because some of the hacks that I implemented? I don't know, but it doesn't sound like you're that much better than me. And that was kind of the general sentiment that I got from a lot of these medications and the forums that I would read was like, man, everybody says like, get help, mama, get medicated. But I didn't feel like a lot of them were doing that much better than me. And even if they were, I still come back to going, okay, why does this work? Why does this work? And if we don't know, I'm personally more comfortable like with the chaos of my own body and what it's doing than I am with the chaos of the medication. I'd rather just live a low-key life. I'm blessed enough to be next to my family. And I mean, it's, once again, that almost paints it like it's a choice. Like, oh, if I took the medication, I'd definitely be feeling better, which is also not always the case. Some women feel like certain medications make them worse. So it's really like a gambling thing or cause other problems, which is a lot of my whole worldview around birthing in the hospital for some women anyways. So I have stayed off of it. I'm not saying that I wouldn't do it. It's kind of like everything else in my opinion around birth. It's like I make an opinion after I do some research, do some studying, feel my own vibes. I'm like, this is what I think. But it's like open in the sense that I'm like, who knows what's going to happen though? Like something could happen and I have to be just like open and chill and flexible to the fact that like I don't know everything and whatever God has for me, he has for me. But these are my opinions, right? I want to stay out of the Western medical establishment. I'm not a fan of any of these pharmaceuticals. And I think a lot of them like solve a problem and then create another problem, if it even solves the first problem. And then just like with birth, I think sometimes things can be penned as like, if you didn't have this, oh my gosh, it would be so much worse. But it's like, how do we know that? And that's the vibe that I got from a lot of these forums. So if you're a woman hearing this, you're like, no, literally, I couldn't eat anything. And then the day I started Zofran or diclectin or whatever, everything changed. That is great for you. Like I said 12 times, everyone's got to pick which things in modernity and which things, we have access to that we really want to utilize. So, yeah, this has been a very long intro, and I feel like I need to start turboing some questions. So someone asked if we know the gender, and the answer to that is no, we're not going to find out the gender. So that kind of went hand in hand with the ultrasound thing. I didn't really care either way. I kind of have moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to know so badly what I'm having. But then also it's very exciting knowing that that's coming down the pipe. Like it'll be the ultimate surprise. And when Dan was like, I really want to wait, I just kind of was like, Okay. I don't know. It's weird too, once again, not to be depressing, but like miscarrying just changed my perspective on a lot of things. Probably the biggest thing that has changed for me, or that changed in my mind after miscarrying, the biggest shift I had was this feeling of like, really like nothing is guaranteed. And I've talked about that before, how just shocking it was. And it just, yeah, that's the best way I can explain it. And so because of that, it made for me a lot of these tests feel not pointless, because obviously if God forbid something were to happen, we're going to find out the gender of the baby. But just a lot of it made me feel like, you know what, I'm just going to wait and see what happens. 1 week at a time, nothing is guaranteed. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the ultrasound thing. You know, I know some women who have felt like, okay, they're high risk. They need to get ultrasounds like once a week. And I just feel like, depending on the situation, the ultrasounds once a week, it's like, it doesn't guarantee anything. I have a friend that actually delivered a baby stillborn at around 37 weeks. And she had been getting all her ultrasounds. I'm not, by the way, if this isn't obvious, I'm not linking that to that just to make that obvious. I'm saying that she had been getting those confirmations, like baby is okay, baby is okay. And then baby wasn't okay. And so I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying that I think that sometimes these tests can have like a false reassurance or false fear, depending. Anyways, that is a side note, because you just asked if I knew the gender, and we're just going to wait. And so, that was right, because I went off on the rant about the miscarriage. So when Dan said that he really wanted to wait, I was like, you know what? Why not? I'm cool with that. Let's wait. We're planning on doing this at home. Let's kind of go a little old fashioned. And yeah. Now, what do I think I'm having? And I could be totally wrong, because I wasn't right with Logan. But I think I'm having a girl. That's what I think. I think I'm growing a little girl. And sorry, future son, if you end up being a son. But I think it's a little girl. So this is going to be wild to find out. I've pretty much thought that from the beginning. So someone asked how I feel about the transition going from one child to two children. And I'm terrified. Like, I don't want to speak that over myself, but it's terrifying. Not only just to like have another person to take care of, obviously, but I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to juggle everything. And I want them to get along. And I'm reading a book right now, or listening to a book called Siblings Without Rivalry. So that tells you what I'm thinking about. I'm like, okay, here we go. Someone asked if we have names picked out yet. I'm not going to share them, and they're not picked, but we definitely have ideas. I will say it's pretty much like one, maybe two ideas for a boy name, and one, two or three, really one for a girl name. So we'll see. So someone asked, what are you taking / not taking this pregnancy? Always interested in your supplements. My supplements have been really, really, really all over the map since getting pregnant, mostly because of how sick I've been. So I do a lot of like, not all of it, but I do a lot of woo-woo-wee-wah since this pregnancy of like, how do I feel? What can I take? Is something making me like gag? Do I not want this supplement? Like whatever. So I've taken everything from, vitamin C, zinc, methylated folate, beef liver, beef organs, Shilajit. Did I already say zinc? I've taken chlorophyll. I can't even think. I trace mineral drops. I take a mineral supplement. I'm trying to think. I've taken vitamin E, cod liver oil, and I just kind of bebop around on whatever feels like my body like needs it. I'm actually starting to get nauseous, because I'm starting to hit that point where I'm going to need to eat again soon. / Logan's coming home, so I really got to speed this up, Nikki. Someone asked what my wackiest pregnancy craving has been, and I think pretty much the only craving I've had this pregnancy has been oranges. Like I don't think I've really had wacky cravings, because I haven't really had much of an appetite. Like, it hasn't been easy, obviously, to get stuff down. But I would say that oranges have been a craving. Like, I've wanted them, and I've been eating so many oranges. It's a little bit bonkers. Although I couldn't eat them for like 2 months. I had 0 oranges. And then all of a sudden I went from like 0 to 100, and I wanted all the oranges. And we've been buying up like all the oranges that are down. Oh, someone had asked when my birth is going to be and like when I'm due. I am due, I think technically April 12th. So originally I thought, I'm going to go early, because I went early with Logan. I went at like the day of like 37 weeks. Dan thinks it was the day before I turned 38 weeks. So I thought that, But the farther I've gotten along, the more I've kind of been like, no, I don't know anything. This baby's just going to come when the baby's coming. I'm not going to like hold my breath for anything, because otherwise, with my luck, they'll be here at 42 weeks. So we're just going to chill. We'll see the baby when we see the baby, but March or April is probably, God willing, when this baby's coming. Someone asked if I had cramping in my first trimester. And yes, I've had cramping just like little bits throughout my pregnancy. Not much, but I've had moments. I had some moments actually that were pretty intense, and I thought, okay, I'm miscarrying. And then it just turned out I needed to take a really big poop. Sorry, but it's true. Yeah. So sorry, I'm trying to speed now because I feel like I didn't get any questions answered. Someone said, I want to know something beautiful that you've experienced through this. So besides, I think the whole way that we found out was beautiful and meant a lot to me. But probably, definitely, the most beautiful thing I've experienced this pregnancy has been a tie of the baby's kicks, like literally magic. When that happens, I'm like, this is what it's for. It's like magic. It's so beautiful and surreal. That combined with Logan's just like pure excitement and joy, and how he tells me sometimes a bajillion times a day, or at least multiple times a week, he goes, Mama, I'm so happy that there's a baby in your belly. And that's really sweet and really beautiful. I'll answer this last one. It's not that exciting, but someone asked what my safety meal was. And I don't really have a safety meal because I've officially thrown up everything. But the meals that I tend to keep repeating, and then I really do got to go so I don't throw up. I've had a lot of avocado toast, lots of bread, lots of eggs, lots of oranges. I'm saying this and I really do think I actually have to stop and go because I'm literally getting nauseous. But that's what I've been eating. So I'm going to go now. I will, God willing, see you guys back here with another new video, hopefully next week. I'm like make-believe imagining for once a week now because I'm just like, I want to be back. I miss it. I will see you guys here hopefully. And yeah, let me know if you have any other questions that you want me to answer, whether it's in the comments or I end up doing like a part 2 at some point. I hope that this was worth it and it was hopefully helpful and interesting and encouraging to you guys. I hope that wherever you're at right now in life or in your pregnancy, that God gives you the grace and the strength and the peace to just keep swimming and to move forward, and to keep your eyes not only on Him, but on your intentions and your goals and loving the people that are around you. So yeah, I will go now. Okay, bye guys.